I still remember that exact second when I realized that Emily was cheating on me. There was no mystery in it, no whispers behind closed doors, or suspicious messages discovered at 3 in the morning. Oh no, she acted as if she specifically wanted me to find out. She needed me to see it. We were at her company's annual corporate evening, a lavish event in the ballroom of a downtown hotel. The room was decorated with gold and black ribbons. Champagne glasses clinked everywhere, and business elites pretended to genuinely enjoy themselves. The atmosphere at these gatherings was always the same, a mix of forced smiles and endless backslapping. I came only because Emily insisted on it. I never liked such gatherings, but she kept saying that it was important for her image to appear there with her husband. If only I had guessed what she was planning. From the moment we walked inside, I felt something was wrong. Something had changed. The entire taxi ride, Emily didn't take her eyes off her phone, ignoring my attempts to start a conversation. But as soon as we crossed the threshold of the hall, she instantly transformed. She was beaming in a way she hadn't beamed at home in a long time. In recent months, she had become a stranger. Constant late nights at work, business trips, and endless secrecy surrounding her gadgets. I had no direct proof, only an intuition that kept me awake at night. But that evening, that premonition turned into a real alarm signal. We moved among the guests, and the tension grew, especially as we approached the bar. That's where I saw him. Brad, a conceited financier and the new star in Emily's department. An expensive watch glinted on his wrist every time he raised his glass, and his handshake practically screamed of an excessive desire to impress. He was tall, with a muscular build that even a perfectly tailored suit couldn't hide. I had heard his name before. Emily mentioned him in passing, always in a dismissive tone, as if he were just a colleague she barely tolerated. But in reality, the way she approached him and that smile on her face told me everything. He turned to her, and his gaze slid over her body so that my fists involuntarily clenched. She leaned closer, laughed, and touched his arm. Just as I was about to step forward, she casually waved at me. It looked awkward, as if she had momentarily forgotten her husband existed, or she simply didn't care. "Hey, honey," she said, turning around and hooking her arm through mine. "This is Brad, that guy I told you about, the MMA fanatic." Brad smirked and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, pal," he said. "Emily mentioned you're kind of into boxing. Maybe we can compare our skills sometime?" There was a clear challenge in his voice. The way he looked me up and down, his smug smile, it all suggested he already considered himself the winner. Emily's fingers dug into his sleeve too intimately. Not only I noticed this, but everyone around us did too. I tried to suppress my anger, pretending I didn't understand anything, but my eyes were surely giving me away. Brad kept smirking. Emily didn't move her hand, and her smile became sharper than ever. "Oh, honey, don't be modest," she teased, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "Brad is really good at MMA. You two could be sparring partners, right, Brad?" He chuckled, setting his glass down on a nearby table. Emily's colleagues, sensing a spectacle, began to move closer. "That's not a bad idea," he said, "but I have to admit, I like worthy opponents, and I have a feeling your husband might not be able to handle it." I felt my heart pounding in my ears. "You want to put that to the test?" I asked, trying to speak calmly, though everything inside me was boiling. He took off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, showing off his muscular forearms. "Let's see what your boxing is worth." Everything happened quickly. People started whispering, forming a circle. Emily stepped back, blending into the crowd, a sly smirk playing on her lips. For a split second, I remembered all those nights I spent in the gym, hitting the heavy bag and sparring with guys much larger than me. Brad had no idea about that. He threw the first punch, a wide swing aimed at my jaw. I ducked, letting him lunge forward. Someone in the crowd laughed, and encouraging shouts were heard. Brad's cheeks turned red. He spun around and tried to punch again. This time, I caught his wrist and twisted it just enough for him to feel a sharp pain. Shock registered on his face. He was a decent fighter, but his actions were driven solely by ego. He didn't expect me to be able to fight back. "Come on, honey, don't embarrass him," Emily said loudly, making sure everyone heard. Her words hurt more than I was ready to admit. "Don't embarrass him?" She was talking about me. Brad grunted, broke free from my grip, and stepped back. His posture was unsteady, his breathing ragged with fury. Lucky move, he spat, clenching and unclenching his fists. I resumed my stance, ready for his next lunge. But at that moment, Emily raised her hand and looked at someone behind me. "Someone, intervene," she shouted. "I don't want Brad to get hurt, and my husband either. Where's Richard? Go get boss Mark." Confusion pierced me. I worked for a different company, but my direct supervisor, Richard, was a well-known figure in local business circles, and apparently was also at this reception. Emily must have known that. Perhaps she had planned it all in advance. It was some kind of elaborate setup, and sure enough, I saw Richard's broad shoulders making their way through the crowd. Hey, break it up," Richard commanded as he approached, looking at me with clear disapproval. "This is no place for a fight." Brad immediately played the victim, dramatically rubbing his wrist. "He attacked me," he claimed in a tone of innocence. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, pretending to be frightened. The crowd buzzed again, all eyes on me. I wanted to explain everything, but I couldn't get a word out. Emily pointed a finger at me, addressing Richard. "He's out of control. He almost broke Brad's arm. You saw it yourself, didn't you? He needs to leave before he hurts someone." I looked at her in complete shock. "What are you doing?" She cut me off with an icy glare. "You don't belong here. This is my company's event. If you can't control yourself, leave." Two uniformed security guards approached. One of them looked from me to Brad, then to Emily. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" She crossed her arms over her chest and nodded in my direction, pursing her lips as if she were scared. "He's the problem," she snapped. "Escort him out." Richard, my boss, gave me a heavy look. "Mark, you heard her. Let's not escalate things. Go home. We'll sort everything out on Monday." I swallowed hard, feeling rage boil under my skin. How dare she paint me as the aggressor? My fingers curled into fists. "I'm not leaving until you tell the truth," I hissed through my teeth. Brad stepped forward, a smirk returning to his face. "Listen, pal, they told you. It's better for everyone if you just leave." His tone was unbearable, but what got to me most was Emily's contemptuous look. She looked at me like I was trash. I saw her give a slight nod to one of the guards. That was enough. Suddenly, I was grabbed from behind. I tried to break free, but the second guard latched onto my shoulder. The crowd parted as I was dragged toward the exit. The grip was rough, my arms twisted behind my back. I winced in pain, but made no sound. "You think you can just throw me out?" I snarled at the nearest guard. I tried to break free, adrenaline surging, but these were big guys, and they were treating me like a rowdy drunk. The next moment, I was shoved forward. I caught my ankle on a chair and almost fell. Somewhere behind me, Brad's mocking laughter rang out. "Move it," one of the guards snapped, squeezing my arm so hard my joints ached. Anger flared in my chest, and I pushed him away. He staggered, but the second guard drove an elbow into my ribs. It wasn't a full punch, but it hurt enough to make my vision go dark. Before I could recover, my arm was wrenched again, and I was dragged several meters. "Get your hands off me," I yelled, but it was useless. Someone in the crowd gasped, someone laughed. I saw people filming the scene on their phones. Emily was no longer visible. She had disappeared into the crowd. I could easily imagine her pressing against Brad with that same smug smile. I was dragged across the polished floor toward a side exit, past buffet tables and coat racks. I caught one last glimpse of the main hall, the sparkling lights, the curious stairs, and then I was in a dark corridor. The guards yanked open a heavy door and literally threw me outside. I stumbled and nearly fell face first onto the asphalt, managing to catch my balance at the last moment. The door slammed shut behind me, followed by the click of a metal lock. I stood there, breathing heavily, my heart pounding, my side aching from the elbow strike. My own wife had orchestrated this whole farce. My boss had told me to get lost like some delinquent teenager. And Brad, God, the thought of his arrogant face was almost unbearable. I wanted to hit something, but raging alone in an empty alley was pointless. I forced myself to breathe deeper and tried to calm down. My phone was still in my pocket. I took it out, looking around. The alley was empty, lit only by a flickering street lamp. I touched the screen with shaking hands and stared at my reflection in the black display. My lip was split, probably from when I was struggling with the guards. Just great. I exhaled and walked away from the building, feeling the adrenaline making my heart race. My own wife. I can't believe she did this. I got in my car and sped off, ignoring traffic lights until the very last moment. I had no desire to go back inside or wait for her. She humiliated me. Worse, she twisted the whole story to make me look like an unstable idiot who couldn't control his anger. She wanted me to leave? Fine. But this was far from over. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying the moment when Emily touched Brad's arm. The way she clung to him in front of everyone, that triumphant smirk on her lips. The memory burned like acid in my veins. I needed to find out how long this had been going on. Though deep down, I already knew it wasn't a random one-time affair. The way she had set everything up, her behavior over the past few months, it all pointed to something much bigger. When the first rays of sunlight pierced the curtains in the bedroom, I was already dressed and sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, whose taste I could barely register. Emily hadn't come home, or, if she had, she slept in the guest room. The house was silent. I turned my phone over in my hands, knowing that gathering evidence was the only way to beat her at her own game. She wanted to paint me as some jealous psycho. If I wanted a clean break and revenge, I needed to play it smart. A few weeks earlier, during that rare moment when she left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter, I installed a small tracking app on it. It was risky and probably illegal, but I didn't care. I opened my phone, found the app, and it indeed showed her location. Emily wasn't even in the house. She was at some unknown address on the other side of the city, probably spending the night with Brad or just crashing somewhere. I tapped my foot irritably, staring at the screen. I was going to gather every shred of evidence I needed to take everything in the divorce and leave her with nothing. I waited until midday before I finally saw her return. I heard her car pull up and the engine die. Then the front door opened, and she walked in as if she were the rightful owner of the place. She was still wearing yesterday's dress, and her hair looked slightly disheveled. She looked at me with mild surprise. "Oh, you're here," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I thought you'd be at the gym, blowing off steam or something." I remained sitting in the living room armchair. I could say the same. "Where were you?" She smirked, shrugged, and tossed her purse onto the couch. "Would you even believe me if I told you?" I gritted my teeth. "Enough of this nonsense. The games are over. I know you're sleeping with Brad. I know you set me up last night." She laughed, but the laugh was fake. "Set you up? You attacked him. It's because of you the guards threw me out." I snapped and jumped to my feet. My voice echoed through the quiet living room. "You wanted to humiliate me." She stepped closer, crossing her arms over her chest. "You humiliated yourself when you started a fight. You're just too blind to see it." I clenched my fists. "I'm not here to argue about terms. I came to tell you it's over, and I'll make sure you lose everything, Emily." A mix of fear and defiance flickered in her eyes. "Oh, please. I have enough dirt on you, too." I cut her off with a short, mirthless laugh. "Dirt on me? I doubt it." She didn't know about the tracking app or the data I had started collecting from her hidden phone. Her eyes narrowed, as if she sensed the confidence in my voice. She took a deep breath, clearly preparing to hurl another insult, but I raised my hand. "You know what? We'll continue this later. I have things to do." I walked past her toward the exit, ignoring her furious glare. The rage still boiled in my chest, but I kept it in check. I had a plan to execute, and losing my composure now wasn't part of it. Besides, I was still smarting from the previous night's fiasco. If I stayed any longer, we'd just end up screaming at each other. The next few days I worked methodically. I documented everything. The times Emily left the house, the addresses she visited, the calls she made. I took screenshots of her messages. She was careless enough to leave her phone unattended while she was in the shower, and I would take it for 2 minutes, forwarding screenshots to myself. Everything pointed to the same story. She and Brad were meeting regularly, booking hotel rooms, and sneaking off for dates during lunch breaks. It was disgusting to see how openly they behaved once the curtain was pulled back. I even found messages between Emily and my boss, Richard. She was feeding him some story about me being unstable, having anger issues, and being potentially dangerous. She was laying the groundwork at work, probably trying to sabotage my position or get me fired, so I would be powerless in the divorce. A brilliant scheme when you thought about it. She was cunning, I had to admit that, but she underestimated how far I was willing to go. I decided that the next time she met with Brad, I would show up, present her with the divorce papers, and end it all on my terms. I contacted a lawyer, paid extra for urgency, and within 1 week, I was holding a stack of official documents. Everything was ready. The notification came in the middle of the morning, as I had predicted. Emily was heading to their usual spot, a boutique hotel downtown with an unremarkable parking lot. My heart began to pound, adrenaline surging again. Time to go. I told my boss I needed to leave after lunch, without going into details. I grabbed the folder with the divorce papers and drove there. I parked a block away from the hotel and waited until the little dot on the app stopped moving. She was inside now, and sure enough, a minute later, I saw Brad's black BMW pull up. He got out, looked around, and entered the building as if he owned it. Rage boiled inside me. I gave them both time to get settled, then walked across the street. At the hotel reception, a bored-looking female clerk glanced at me. I considered bribing her to get the room number, but I noticed the elevator call buttons light up. Some tourist had pressed the call button. Following my gut, I got into the elevator with him, got off on the 3rd floor, and walked quietly down the hallway. And there, at the end of the hall, I saw Brad coming out of a corner suite. He didn't see me. He was too busy texting on his phone, probably letting Emily know he was there. My heart was thumping. I crouched behind a service cart. Brad knocked on the door. Emily opened it a crack. The next moment, he slipped inside, and the door closed. I gritted my teeth. That was it. No more illusions. I walked determinedly down the hall, ignoring the pounding in my temples. The number on the door was 312. I clenched my fist and pounded on it 3 times, the sound echoing off the walls. Muffled voices came from inside, then Emily's voice. "Who is it?" I didn't answer, just waited. The door opened a crack, and I pushed it all the way open. Emily recoiled with a shriek. She was only wearing a fitted blouse and a short skirt, her hair disheveled, as if they had already started having fun. Brad stood behind her by the bed, his eyes wide, his shirt unbuttoned, stubble on his chin. "What the hell?" Emily screamed, regaining her balance. "Are you insane?" Brad straightened his shoulders. "Dude, do you have a problem?" I laughed shortly. "Yeah, I do." I reached into my inside jacket pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. I threw them at Emily. She tried to swat them away, and the sheets scattered across the carpet. On the top page, in bold letters, was written, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." "Congratulations," I said, in a voice dripping with sarcasm. "Now you can sleep with him all you want. Just sign where indicated." She stared at the scattered sheets, her face paling. You brought divorce papers." Brad rubbed his neck and stepped forward, as if to shield Emily from me. "Hey man, calm down. You can't just barge in here. You want trouble?" Blood was pounding in my veins. This was my moment. For a split second, I wanted to break his jaw. Instead, I slapped him across the face. The sound of the hit exploded in the small room. He staggered, crashed into the dresser, and nearly fell. Emily shrieked, "Mark, what the hell are you doing?" Brad blinked and tried to lunge at me. He only managed 1 step before I firmly planted my palm on his chest and shoved him. He flew backward and hit his head against the wall with a dull thud. His eyes were full of pain and surprise. One hand went up to his cheek where I had hit him. I pointed a finger at him. "Don't even think about it," I hissed. "If you move again, I won't just mess up your face. I'll destroy your damn life." Brad bared his teeth but didn't move. He must have seen something in my eyes that made him freeze. Emily ran to him, put her hand on his shoulder, and turned to glare at me. "You have no right to do this. You're going to jail," she threatened. I didn't care. I muttered that if she thought this was a joke, she could try to stop me. I already had all the evidence I needed. Photos, text messages, and even a video recording from that hotel you lowlifes visited last time. I promised Emily that I could make it all public at her work, or send everything to her mother. Her face twisted with rage. She claimed I was out of my mind and not the man she married, calling the whole thing madness. I smirked, maybe, but she was the one who created the person I had become. Brad tried to get up, leaning on the dresser. I shifted my heavy gaze to him and ordered him to stay put. This wasn't a discussion, it was an order. He froze, then leaned back against the wall, breathing unevenly. It was obvious he was just posing as a tough guy, but was actually a coward who had never faced real consequences for his actions. Emily took her hand off his shoulder and pointed at the stack of divorce papers scattered on the floor. "Fine," she spat. "Get out, and I'll sign them." "Are you happy?" I asked. I leaned close to her, lowering my voice so she could feel my rage. I said I wasn't happy, I was furious. But the sooner I got rid of her, the better. I kicked the doorstop aside. I warned her that she would regret the humiliation she had put me through. I swore that if the two of them tried to make me the villain, I would destroy them both. Without waiting for an answer, I turned and walked out. Behind me, Brad muttered something, and Emily hissed at him, her voice trembling with shock. I didn't listen, because I had already said everything I wanted. Over the next few days, Emily slowly moved out. She didn't show up for a while, probably thinking over her tactics or waiting for me to cool down. In the meantime, I packed her things into neat stacks, clothes, photos, and various trinkets she had left behind. I was done playing the nice guy. I arranged for movers who specialized in urgent relocations. My lawyer informed me that legally, I couldn't just throw her belongings on the curb, but I had the right to pack them and deliver them to her if I gave prior notice. And that's exactly what I did. 1 week before, I called her mother, Linda. "Linda," I said, forcing myself to be polite. "I'm moving Emily's things and sending them to your address. She can pick them up there or decide what to do next. That's your business." Linda was beside herself. She had always defended her daughter and blamed me for everything. I expected that reaction, so I calmly repeated that the marriage was over, and I was not obligated to keep Emily's things in my house. The call ended with Linda screaming, "You'll regret this, you worthless husband," and hanging up. That was the final touch. The day I hired the movers was the day Emily decided to show up with backup. Half of her things were already packed in boxes on the lawn. Sofas, tables, bundles of clothes. A moving truck with an open ramp was parked in the driveway. 2 guys were carrying out a dresser. I was standing on the porch, watching them work and overseeing the process, when I heard screeching brakes. It was Emily's sedan. She practically jumped out of the driver's seat. Her mother, Linda, flung open the passenger door, and from the back seat stepped none other than my boss, Richard. Yes, the same one who had ordered the guards to throw me out of that party. A grim sense of satisfaction washed over me as I watched them march toward the house with expressions ranging from furious to judgmental. "What the hell is this?" Emily demanded, pointing at the boxes. "Are you throwing my things away like trash?" I crossed my arms over my chest and said I was sending them to her new address, as agreed. "We agreed to nothing of the sort," Linda hissed. "You have no right to treat my daughter this way." She stepped onto the porch, nearly bumping into me, and demanded I show some respect, calling me a degenerate. Richard stepped forward, adjusting his shirt collar. He suggested we resolve this peacefully, saying there was no need to make a scene. According to him, Emily had told him everything, how I attacked Brad and how I threatened her. He called it unacceptable. I laughed a cold, joyless laugh. Threatened her? She's lucky I didn't file charges for adultery and defamation. And as for you, Richard, you want to talk about unacceptable. You humiliated me in front of half the city by calling security on me like I was some drunk idiot. He bristled, claiming I started the fight and couldn't control my anger. Emily chimed in that I was the same hot-headed fool, and that's why we were over. She asked why I couldn't just be a normal person. "You cheated on me and disgraced me in front of everyone." I cut her off, raising my voice. "Don't pretend to be an innocent victim." Linda suddenly lunged forward, intending to slap me. I caught her wrist in midair. She tried to pull away, muttering curses. "Get your hands off my mother," Emily shrieked. I pushed Linda back 1 step. Not hard enough to make her fall, but enough to make it clear she needed to back off. I warned them that they were on my property and gave them 1 chance to calm down. Before Linda could answer, Richard tried to step between us, threatening to call the police. I bared my teeth, pointing a finger at him, and told him to go ahead. I reminded them that they were trespassing on private property. I told Emily to come alone to pick up her junk, and that he and Linda had no business here. Emily looked like she wanted to claw my eyes out. She screamed that Richard was there as a mediator, and she had asked him to help sort things out. "I've already sorted it out," I cut in, pointing at the boxes. "I hired movers to take your crap to your mother's because you're not staying here anymore. That was the plan. Now get off my porch, or I'll have them load your pathetic backsides into the truck along with the furniture." Richard stepped closer, a false bravado flaring in his eyes. He called my behavior childish and started to say what I had always been. He didn't finish the sentence. I slapped him hard across the face. The sound of the slap cracked through the cool afternoon air. He staggered, nearly losing his balance on the top steps of the porch. Emily screamed. Linda gasped, her eyes wide. She called me crazy. Richard wiped blood from his split lip, staring at it as if he couldn't believe what had happened. He threatened me with arrest for assault. I made a scoffing sound, stepping forward. My heart was pounding, adrenaline burning through me. "Go ahead, call them," I offered. "I'll tell them you and Linda barged onto my property after I told you to leave. It'll be your word against mine and the movers." I glanced back at the workers, who had frozen by the truck with wide eyes. I added that I had already informed them about the unauthorized presence of outsiders, and if they backed up my story, that would be enough for the police. "You're a fucking lunatic," Linda hissed. I cut her off, raising my hand and told her to shut up, adding that she had raised a cheating daughter. Then I turned to Emily and told her to take her shit and get out. I forbade her from returning unless it was through a lawyer. Emily's face contorted, and she promised I would burn in hell. I shrugged and said that might be true, but at least I would be in my own house, free from her betrayal. I demanded they leave my porch. Richard, still holding his hand to his bleeding lip, tried to muster his courage. He declared that I would be fired first thing in the morning, as I was a dangerous employee. I burst out laughing, walking right up to him. "Good luck, boss. I have enough evidence of your close relationship with my soon-to-be ex-wife to sue you for harassment and wrongful termination. So go ahead, try it. Let's see who ends up on the street." Richard's face went pale. For a moment, there was silence. The tension was suffocating, like a drawn string. Then, Linda grabbed Emily's arm and said they had to leave, that this was pointless. Emily looked at me with contempt and promised this wasn't the end. I met her gaze and said that everything she deserved was already in those boxes. I waved a hand toward the movers finishing up and told them to get off my land. I warned, if I saw any of them cross my property line again, I would get my magnum, and then we would test their bravery. Richard's voice cracked with rage. He called me a piece of trash and promised to get me blacklisted from every decent company in the city, so I would never find work again. I shrugged, noting that he had said that before. I allowed him to do whatever he wanted, but repeated that any appearance of his on my land would be considered trespassing. I promised that next time I wouldn't fight fair. Emily, Linda, and Richard turned and stumbled down the porch steps. Linda shouted one more insult over her shoulder, calling me a worthless bastard. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching them retreat to the car. The pale movers continued loading the last items of furniture into the van. One of them shot me a nervous glance. I nodded, letting him know everything was fine. The next few minutes passed in silence. The truck driver confirmed the address for Linda's place that I had given him. Then, Emily's sedan roared off. Linda sat in the passenger seat, Richard in the back. They were probably all cursing my name. I didn't care. By the time the movers pulled out of the driveway, the sun had already dipped below the rooftops. A deep calm settled over me. Some debris littered the porch, bits of cardboard and scraps of tape. I picked up a piece of packing plastic, tossed it in the bin, and slowly exhaled. Now this house was completely mine. Empty, but mine.